So how do you help people that think that they're communicating, but they're not, do that? And that's where I saw this tool that ties to your two strengths, and it puts everything in the context of loving and loathing.
Hello and welcome to episode 101 of the Living and Leading with Emotional Intelligence podcast. I'm your host, Brittney-Nichole. That's right, we have surpassed the 100 mark. Didn't really celebrate it that much. It was during my Parenting with Emotional Intelligence episode last week, so I will celebrate it today. Woohoo! We have surpassed, we are in triple digits now. So let's celebrate by bringing back a returning guest from like the early episodes of the podcast, specifically episode 7, Gary Frey. The reason I decided to bring Gary back on for episode 101 is because him and I were catching up just a couple weeks ago when we were talking about the workplace environment and how COVID impacted that. And I know that you may be tired of hearing that, but it really has impacted how we communicate, how connected we are. And we were talking about different tools. And specifically, we started talking about assessments originally, how we're not a fan of assessments. But then Gary brought up this tool that he absolutely loves because it really does facilitate communication and gets people checking in with one another. So I don't want to give too much away. That said, without further ado, here is the second round with Gary Frey. Hope you enjoy.
Awesome.
So you ready to get started?
Let's go.
Let's do this. So Gary, since you were on episode 7 and this is episode 101, I'm just going to let you reintroduce yourself to the listeners and viewers. They may be familiar with you, but it's been some time. So if you wouldn't mind, let's just start with who's Gary? What do you do?
Cool. Well, thanks. It's an honor to be 101 and number 7. That's pretty cool. I think we're on episode like 51 or 52, something like that on our Anything But Typical podcast. So you've already doubled that, which is pretty cool. I'm Gary Frey. I have run 4 companies. I've done 2 turnarounds, and I've been in 2 Fortune 100s, and I don't fit in anybody's nice, neat box, but I kind of like it that way. I've come to learn that I like it that way. I didn't initially, but and so I run business development for a regional CPA firm, and I also coach CEOs of high growth companies as well as their management teams and help them scale up and where they're getting aligned and focused and executing well together and having fun. That's the whole point of it. And so I love that. And so, I get to work with privately held business owners all day, every day, and in the city I love in Charlotte, North Carolina, and life is good. It's a great way to live. So,
and anybody who's listening or watching, if you're on LinkedIn, I highly recommend you following Gary because he has these fabulous Fry Fridays.
Yes, totally grateful it's Friday, TGIF.
Yeah.
But it's FREYDA.
Oh, yes, that's right. I don't know why I went straight to Fry Fridays, but yeah, TGIF.
Yeah.
But I love that. So definitely check that out for some very short, insightful clips, So I love it. Awesome.
Those are fun. Yeah, we like doing that. I like doing that because I want to honor somebody who has made a positive difference in my life. That's why I started doing those. So, and it also helps people understand that they pronounce my name Fry instead of Frey. So.
Oh, that's good. I like that. Like a little insert there.
Yeah, there you go.
Now I just need to figure out how to get people to spell my name right. Because even though it's in my signature and all over the place, people spell it A-N-Y instead of N-E-Y.
Oh, yeah.
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 It's not any, it's knee. So maybe I just need to in my signature, put a clip of somebody's knee, like kneecap and they're like, why is this knee? Anyways, I don't know. We'll figure it out. off topic, but so the reason that I wanted to have you back on is because we just kind of were catching up a week or so ago,
Yeah.
and just how life is, this far into COVID, and what are some challenges that we're seeing in the workplace. And we got on the topic of assessments. And I think we both agreed we're not big fans of a lot of assessments because they're kind of one and dones.
Yeah.
There's a lot of great information you can gain from an assessment, but people aren't taking full advantage of it.
Yeah.
And you started telling me about this assessment that you fell in love with. And would you call it an assessment in the traditional form, or is it more?
I would say it's an assessment plus.
Okay.
Because a lot of assessments, and I've taken, I think, pretty much everyone under the sun, and even some proprietary ones. Karen Lee here in Charlotte, North Carolina, has another cool one. She has a company called Narrative, and hers is off of the Big Five. And it's a really good one. I've got that one in my file cabinet full of all of my own assessments. And yeah, there are patterns, and that's all great.
Yeah. But
my frustration has been, without exception, on all of them, with the exception of StandOut 2.0, which is by Marcus Buckingham, who was one of the founders of StrengthsFinder, him and Clifton, and then they sold to Gallup. And I like StrengthsFinder too, but it had the same issue that I have had with every assessment, which is, oh, hey, I'm a this and you're a that, Brittney. And hey, I want you to talk to me like this, and you want me to talk to you like that.
Yeah.
Then it just fizzles fast. And then you go like, now what do I do? So I was actually with a friend of mine who's with ADP. ADP ended up buying Marcus Buckingham's company, StandOut 2.0, because of this assessment. But it's more than the assessment. So he basically took StrengthsFinder, took it down into 9 major categories. Cool. And then you go through the 30 to 45 minute quiet time assessment online, and it spits out, hey, these are your top 2 of these 9 categories. And we're all made up of, some of all of those, but these are your primary 2. Okay, cool. Well, that is still kind of in the assessment category as far as I'm concerned. Like, okay, well, all right. So now I'm a connector, which, that's a hard to believe, and teacher. And I was like, teacher, really? But based on that assessment, yeah, I guess I am. But then what? Well, this guy and I were walking the golf course at the Wells Fargo Championship a couple years ago. And he goes, oh, it's a Friday, is on the practice round, and is like, oh, I need to check in. And he's got his cell phone, he's got his iPhone. I'm like, what's that? And he goes, oh, well, yeah, check this out. So literally in less than 2 minutes, he checks in and answers a series of about 6 or 7 questions, hits send, and it goes to his immediate supervisor. I'm like, oh, wow, that's cool. He goes, yeah. And so, and I can walk you through what's in there, but I said, well, how much time does your supervisor spend? And he goes, I don't know, but he's at the next hole. So we went and talked to him, and he has like 10 reports, direct reports. And he said, yeah, I spend, probably about an hour a week going through those. And again, it's a dashboard of 6 or 7 questions, but it's got priorities and it's got ability to make comments back and this and that. I'm like, well, that's pretty cool. So what it's doing is it's measuring engagement. If you want me to, I'll walk you through the questions that are on this thing.
Yeah. So before we do that, I want to tie this back to emotional intelligence, because if anyone's new to this podcast and like, okay, what does this have to do with emotional intelligence? I just want to say that when we do assessments, it's that awareness of one, why are we doing it? And how are we going to use this? So it's having that game plan. And are we using it as a means to an end? So a huge part of emotional intelligence is self-awareness and social awareness and connecting those two. And really, how do we connect with other people on an authentic level? So that's how I'm tying this in to EQ for anyone listening or watching that doesn't see that connection yet. So
yeah, and I'm glad you did a little pause there, because I'm really excited about it. It's not because it's another piece of technology, because quite frankly, I don't need another piece of technology.
Yeah.
Please, I've got plenty of apps that I don't use already. But the need that I saw was, hey, this is a cool communication facilitation tool.
Mm-hmm.
Communication and lack thereof is the number one issue in every company, everyone. And it's probably the number one issue between two people in the same household.
Oh, yeah.
It's communication.
It's a people problem.
It's a people problem.
Yeah.
And, coming from communication firms in my early part of my career, they're the worst. It's like the cobbler's children have no shoes. Communication firms don't know how to communicate very well with each other. So it's funny, but it's a problem, and so, I'm not a CPA or a CFO, but I work for a regional CPA firm because I love helping businesses grow, and that's our emphasis. But we're filled to the rafters with people on the DISC assessment that would be high S, high Cs, high steadiness, high compliance, usually more introverted than not.
Mm-hmm.
Well, okay. Communication is a luxury in there, it's optional, well, not really. So I'm like, how do we better engage? And we've got a pretty cool culture. We don't lose our millennials. If we do, we lose them to a client that wants to hire them. And we're okay with that. I mean, we aren't going to stand in the way of somebody advancing their career, but we don't have the traditional millennial and Gen X turnover that a lot of other companies have. But that doesn't mean that we've solved the problem. Communication is always a challenge. And the other thing that I really don't like is I hate annual performance reviews. Oh my gosh, I hate those. And doing them, semi-annually is just as bad, only twice as much, so they're terrible.
Mm-hmm.
Well, so how do you help people that think that they're communicating, but they're not, do that? And that's where I saw this tool that ties to your two strengths, and it puts everything in the context of loving and loathing various tasks. It says love. This week I did, these are the things I loved doing. Oh, that's interesting language. I created this thing in '93 called the Thrive Wither for myself, because I had to leave my own company because I caught my partner taking money out that he wasn't supposed to. So
check out episode 7, I think, for more details.
Yeah. So that's when I was like, okay, I've got to do something. I'm going to have to leave my own company because my name's on the door, and I didn't want to destroy him.
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't going to destroy my name. So I did this super simple T-chart called the Thrive Wither. Somebody else has probably invented it, but I just had to do it on myself. What makes me come alive at the ripe old age of 31 at that time? And what are the things that make me wither, where my tank gets drained?
Mm-hmm.
I have a whole lot more in those columns now at 59, but nonetheless, I had to start with that. Well, this is the same language. It's like, because if you're spending a bunch of time in the StandOut 2.0 language of loathing, you're going to eventually burn out or leave.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just the way it is. I mean, it's draining your tank. And so, yeah, there's always going to be stuff in the loathe column that we have to do. We have to clean the toilets. We have to take out the trash. We have to, wash the dishes. We have to make the beds, all that kind of stuff. That's just part of life. And same way, there are those tasks in business and in our jobs that we have to do. Hey, well, if I'm an entrepreneur, I don't have to, I'm my boss. Well, yeah, but you're selling something to somebody and actually they're the boss.
Yeah. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And by the way, you have to do everything if you're just launching something.
Exactly.
Everything. And there's going to be a whole lot of stuff probably in your loathe column. So you just got to pay attention to that. And as you grow, delegate or get somebody to do the stuff that you hate doing. You might even be really good at it, but you hate doing it because you're going to be happier. So anyway, that's what I love about this thing. It ties into a vernacular that I already knew, but going back to, well, why would we do this at a CPA firm? We didn't know COVID was coming. When my wheels started going in motion probably in May of 2019. Well, we didn't know anything about COVID, and so when we started rolling it out in January, actually we did a pilot with our leadership team. And then I got the biggest detractor that I thought might be in the firm to make sure that he wasn't sabotaging this. Like, either you're on board or we're not doing it. Well, what's funny is he's the biggest cheerleader of it now, which is hilarious. And he has the biggest group of people. We have about 80 people in the company, but he has the biggest department reporting into him. And when we went into COVID, he said, man, this has been a lifesaver, because what happens, and when I walk you through the various screens, and I have to check in today so I can actually show you real time, what it looks like. It's kind of cool.
Oh, that'd be great.
But, what it has the ability to where you see if somebody's putting something on this week, these were the things that I loathed. And if somebody's like, nah, not applicable, or it wasn't anything really, okay, cool. But if, I've had those where somebody that reports to me as little kids, and one week in particular was like, man, my kids are driving me crazy. I feel like I'm letting you guys down, feel like, the world is out of control and I don't feel like I'm contributing. Like, hey, let's have a conversation about that. It's okay. It's okay. It's life. And this is a curveball that we're all dealing with. But I would have never had that conversation on an annual performance review. Yeah. Never. They would have never raised it. But so when you get on a rhythm and it says, hey, it's time to check in every Friday, which is why when we were walking the golf course, Mike said, oh, I got to check in. And you've got kind of through the weekend or whatever. And if somebody doesn't do it, you can hit a button that says nudge them and like, hey, do this. But it's pretty non-invasive. It's very kind of casual, but then you also see what's happening on engagement. So I can walk you through some of that. But if you're going to use this as the Gestapo to beat your people, don't even waste your time or money. And it's not a ton of money. I mean, we spend a few $1,000 a year, I think, to have this throughout our entire company. Didn't
you say it was like 2,500 for the year?
Something like that. 25, 3,500. I don't remember. And we've added people since we started this thing almost 2 years ago now. But it really has been a great thing. Now, there are also people that will remain unnamed, but they are even partners in our firm, and I'm not a partner, but they mail it in. And I've talked with them. I'm like, it takes you 1.5 seconds to hit agree. And that's all you do, but that's garbage in, garbage out. I mean, it really doesn't facilitate any conversation. And in one case, this individual says, yeah, but I just don't, this person is very much a nonconformist. I want to have a conversation. I said, all right, call me. Let's set up time to talk. Okay, cool. So if nothing else, this tool that they don't want to really use and participate in is facilitating a phone call. Okay, cool. So anyway, I'll pause and then I can walk you through this if you want me to, but anything that you want to address before I do that?
Yeah. So I was looking at the site. So I'll put this in the show notes with some of the stats on this. And it says overall engagement increased when people are using this 92%. Like,
I believe it.
That's significant. And sustained adoption is at 99%. That's pretty incredible.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing. Again, but if you are predisposed to, oh, this is something new, it's something I got to do, literally, if you're going to be even like, I'm very detailed in what I do, it takes me less than 5 minutes a week to do. And I'm very detailed in it. And I don't know, Adam Boatsman, who I report into, he sees it. I don't know if he, goes through all of those things where he's like, yeah, and he pays attention to if I've got something on my load, because he does. He pays attention if I've put something there and he's like, hey, what's going on?
Well,
which is cool.
Yeah. And another thing, it makes you check in with yourself, because you're not simply checking in with that other person, but it's forcing you to pause, get present, and really focus in on what your energy drainers and renewers are. Yeah. Because so many people go through life and it's like, yeah, I'm anxious and I'm stressed and I'm burnt out and I'm overwhelmed. And this day I'm feeling really great and I don't know what it is. You would be surprised how many people I speak with that don't know what they're feeling and don't know why they're feeling it. They just know that they feel off or they feel great, but they can't attach it to anything.
Yeah, I think that's a great point, and it does it on a regular basis, every week, not every year. And all of a sudden you're getting all heated up because, oh my, it's exam time, no, I mean, this is life, man. I mean, go through life with your spouse or your significant other and not talk except for once a year. Oh, well, that.
Yeah. So let me ask you this, because it's frequent. So is there a log that you can say, oh, I'm seeing a trend here?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Okay. That's great.
Yeah. So I'll show you, I'm going to go ahead and pull this. So
awesome.
You can see right here, Gary. Okay. All right. Time to check in. Boom. All right. So this week, here it's 5 options. Okay. This week, I had a chance to use my strengths every day, and that's tying directly back to my top 2. Strongly agree, neutral, disagree, strongly disagree. Unless I'm on vacation, I usually hit strongly agree because I work my butt off, but I love it, right. And I know I'm making impact. Now, some people may not be that great of a grader on themselves. All right. So then this week I added outstanding value. That is so strongly agree or strongly disagree or whatever, neutral. Like I'll do neutrals if I'm on vacation because I really wasn't adding any value, but I was recharging my battery. So
the first question, I just want to reiterate this for those listening who may not be hearing the questions. So the first one was, were you able to use your strengths? Do you feel like you were able to use your strengths? Then the second one was value. So do you feel like you brought value?
Outstanding value.
Correct. I added outstanding value. Okay.
All right. So then the next one, this week, let's see here.
It's kind of hard to see the text, but you can read it.
Connect you with the about your work priorities in person, in StandOut, via text, via email, etc. Yeah, I mean, he and I talk very regularly. So I said, yes, boom. All right, so now I'm in. Now, this is where it gets interesting. What activities did you love this week? Write down activities which you felt fulfilled, focused, and energized. And so I usually have half a dozen or more that I put in there. Like, I love our weekly webinars that we do. I love doing our podcast of Anything But Typical. I love coaching folks. I love meeting with prospects and clients. I love closing business. I love solving problems. Those are usually things that I put in my love column. So yes. And then the next question is, what activities did you loathe? Open-ended question. You can put NA. And quite frankly, I really didn't have anything this week that I loathed. There have been times when I've had teammates drop the ball and we've had issues that we've had to address that, we've covered this, how many times, but now we still had somebody that, dropped the ball. So, okay, no end of the world, but yeah, it was frustrating. Or I've had, people that have said, hey, Gary, you kind of triggered me a little bit when, you hit me up 5 minutes before a call and said, hey, can you resend me something but I was in transit. Like,
So put that pressure and stress. Yeah.
Right. So I'm like, okay, this person would have never told me that in an annual review, but they have the freedom to tell me that on a weekly basis, like, guilty. Thank you for raising that.
Yeah.
Then the next question is, I'm reviewing existing priorities. I've got a whole bunch of priorities on here and I can recycle them because I didn't get it finished, or I can knock it off the list. And then if I knock it off the list, it says, working on this made me feel strong, weak, or neither.
Oh, so it allows you to insert the task and then rate them once. Oh, interesting.
Yeah. And so then you keep recycling, and then you go to the next one. What are the priorities for next week? Oh, okay. Well, okay. And then I'll go to my calendar. I'm like, okay, yep, this, and we've got this coming up. And then the final question is what help do you need from Adam or whomever your stuff goes to next week? Hey, I may have nothing, or I may, like, Adam, it's really critical that you're at this meeting. Boom, submit, done.
I love that.
And then you start seeing the trend, which is really cool. So I'm dumping out of this thing. Let's see here. It's not letting me dump out, I guess, but I can go back in and I can see the trends of all my team that are reporting up to me. I can see what's happening on engagement. I can say, oh, they were, and sometimes they felt like they didn't, contribute because they were sick. They're dealing with kid problems. They felt like they would drop the ball. Maybe they did, maybe they didn't. Maybe they were just being harsh on themselves.
Yeah.
But man, like, there's so much great information. And then we do a quarterly engagement pulse and we just did this last week. It has like 4 questions that goes out to the entire company. And then it's amassing the data, and it's basically, are you feeling valued? Are you engaged? Do you feel like you're contributing? It's looking at that kind of cycle. And think about it. Moving into lockdown almost 2 years ago now, March 16th, 2020, which was a Monday. All of a sudden we're embracing, Zoom, and we're having a completely change, and we're isolated from one another. We can't just pop in and say, hey, what's going on? And, hang outside of your door or your cube or whatever. That went away. Now we still have a monthly meeting where we get everybody on. So the Zoom screens are crazy. And the requirement is, cameras on. And we didn't have cameras for everybody initially. So we had to get all that situated and that sort of thing. But it still doesn't replace prompts and dialogue.
Right.
And especially if somebody feels like they're not qualified to have meaningful, they don't know how to start conversations other than, hey, really nice weather out there. How the kids, they don't feel equipped. This is one of those really cool tools to help that.
Yeah. I absolutely, when you told me about it, I was like, yeah, I have to have you on the podcast to talk about this, because it does tie into both living and leading with emotional intelligence because of that awareness, again, facilitating that communication. But more importantly, the leaders, like you said, really embracing it, not just seeing it as something else to do, but really help their employees and kind of level the playing field, I think, a bit in regards to, organizations, there's still a lot of hierarchy, right? But when you're able to get that personal with people and connect, it kind of brings them off that pedestal and puts you on common ground in a sense, builds that rapport and deep connection.
And the way that we run our company is not hierarchical. We follow really kind of a mix, but much of the EOS platform. So we have people that are in charge of what we call box owners, where they are responsible, whether it be for a division or a massive function that cuts across the organization. So in my role in the past year, I'm the business development guy, but I also have been basically in charge of half of our portfolio of clientele. So I've got 3 partners that, way outrank me from a partner standpoint, that their stuff reports into me because of the function that I'm holding. And so it's based on function. You can set it up however you want. If you're a real command and control hierarchy, and that's how you guys run your business, you can set it up that way. We set it up as to based on functions, and you can change it as things evolve. We're gonna, now that we've gotten things kind of situated, we're taking the evolution of our structure to the next level, and I'm going to peel off of that, and I'm happy to do that so I can focus on the other stuff that I love to do. But those that are reporting into me will be different again. Okay, cool.
Now, does it allow because you report to someone, but does it allow the people that get those reports to report to someone else? Like, does everybody have that ability to be seen and heard, if you will, for a lack of a better?
So it ripples throughout the entire organization. So everybody is sending their stuff into the natural person. So it may be the department leader, it may be one rung down, but in most cases, at least the way for us, it's either the department leader or a box holder that naturally has some responsibility for the care and well-being of those people. And again, for me, it's somewhat unusual because I've got partners that are reporting into me. If you looked at the hierarchy, and we're a pretty flat organization, quite frankly, we're extremely flat. Cool. So,
but did the department heads and the box holders, if you will, did they get to submit their? Okay, that's what
they all report up. So mine goes up to Adam. Now, I'm trying to think about if Adam, as the top of the house, basically, or if and his title isn't CEO, but in function, it kind of is.
Mm-hmm.
So, who's he sounding off on?
Right.
It may be, and I haven't even asked him this, but it may be going to our growth coach. It may be going to Robert Fish. That's how I would set it up. if I had a coaching client that they were using this, I would have the CEO send their stuff up to me, because the CEO, man, that's the loneliest position in the entire place. And so, they got all this responsibility, but where's their relief valve? That's where an outside coach actually really helps a lot. Yeah. So that's how I would set it up. And right now, I'm trying to get one of my coaching clients to get moving on to StandOut 2.0, because I think it would be beneficial. And they're doing great. They do a lot of great stuff, but this will jazz it up even more.
Yeah. And I think this is a great thing to, and granted the questions would be a little bit different, but to apply this to your personal relationships, right? Just have a sit down check-in, whether it's daily or bi-weekly or weekly, whatever, and check in with your significant other, your family, your friends, your children. I think children would benefit from this, because I think a lot of younger generations are really struggling to communicate their frustrations and their feelings, and don't know how to handle the anxiety and stressors of the modern world. So I think this would be something that would be beneficial for parents, just to understand how it works. And instead of having an app, because I think you really need that human contact with this, make it more personable, but just do check-ins.
And make it simple. I mean, if I was going to do that, I'd go, and I think that's a great idea. I haven't instituted that with my wife. Now, if she wouldn't see me as instituting another rigid thing. So
how many rigid things have you?
Another thing. Well, I'll come up with ideas and things that I like using in business. And she's like, no, okay, fine. But I could see even weaving this into conversation where it's not seen as a project or another thing, and saying, hey, what did you love doing this week? What were the things that made you come alive?
Yeah.
Hey, anything this week that, drained your tank, things that you made you wither, that you loathed doing, whatever the terminology, it's still the same thing. What did you love doing? And what's the stuff that drained your tank? Is there anything that I could do? If you had those three things, I mean, that's really the guts of this program. Yeah, it's got priorities and stuff like that for facilitating more communication on business and getting stuff done. Okay, cool. And I can't imagine implementing this or having this discussion with my wife of like, hey, do you think you provided outstanding value this week?
Oh man.
Well, yeah.
I put up with you.
Exactly. What else do you need? So, but I do think that, what things this last week did you do, that were deposits in your bank account, that you love doing. So I'm going to actually try that out tonight at dinner.
Let me know how that goes.
Okay.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, Gary, thanks again for coming on and sharing this, because I think it is so important that we stop with these one-off assessments. And if we do assessments, ask yourself, is this a means to an end? Is this to, check off a box because this is what everybody else is doing? How are we going to use this? And especially emotional intelligence assessments, they're so easily manipulated. And I think one thing I told you was, I went to a networking event and somebody asked me what I did, and they're like, oh yeah, I took an emotional intelligence assessment and I'm really emotionally intelligent.
Let me tell you all about it.
And I'm thinking, oh my gosh, see, this is the problem. The fact that you had to tell me that you are emotionally intelligent tells me that you lack self-awareness and feel the need. Anyways, I could go off on that, but yeah. So I think this is really great, and it's called StandOut, and it's by ADP. And I will put
right here.
Oh, is there a book? Oh, there's a book.
StandOut by
2.0.
Marcus Buckingham.
Awesome.
And Marcus Buckingham is the guy, one of the co-founders of StrengthsFinder, but New York Times bestselling.
Awesome.
And ADP ended up buying his company. And so it's part of that. So I don't even know if you did a Google search and said ADP, would StandOut 2.0 come up, but Marcus Buckingham definitely would. So
yeah, it's excuse me. What I'm looking at is adp.com/what we offer products. It's within their product line, but I will put the link to both this and the link to the book in the show notes, as well as your Anything But Typical podcast and your LinkedIn,
cool.
so people can check out your TGIF. I love Friday.
Yeah, cool.
So yeah, but thank you so much. And I hope you have a great weekend, and I hope all goes well with you implementing this with your wife tonight over the dinner table.
Yeah, I'm going to give it a whirl. I don't know why I hadn't thought about that earlier, but it's like, yeah, well, this kind of makes sense. Duh. So yeah, stay tuned.
Awesome. I will. Take care.
Thanks so much, Brittney.
Thank you.